spend 15 minutes a day, every single day, on something that matters to you. I don't care if it matters to anybody else. It might. But something that matters to you. And preferably do all this before you check your email. But that's up to you.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a great one. Our guest is the author of The 15-Minute Method, the surprisingly simple art of getting it done. Sam Bennett, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Michael. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Yes, and it's great to have you. And I know getting things done is something our audience loves. I'm sure many audiences love getting things done.
Yes.
Maybe not so much every audience, but it's a big topic. It's discussed often, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. So before we get into learning how to get it done more simply, tell us about you and how you ended up writing this book.
It was completely inadvertent. This was not my plan, but it's worked out great. I started out as an actor. I was one of those kids who did plays in the living room in the backyard and went to theater camp and did all the plays in school and then went on to be an actor in Chicago and then Los Angeles. And, did a lot of theater, did a lot of drama for the radio, did a fair amount of television. So I had one of those acting careers that, it went well enough that you didn't want to give up on it, but not so well as to be able to support a person.
Right.
And along the way, I just got really interested in this question of how do overthinkers, people with a lot of ideas, highly creative people with a lot of talents and skills, how do they make decisions? How do you know what to do and when to do it? I would read all these. I was always pretty good about getting things done and managing projects and producing shows and moving forward in my life. But I had a lot of highly creative friends that weren't, and this question of, well, when there's no right way, right? There's no right way to have an acting career. There's no right way to own a business. There's no right way to be a bookkeeper. There's just, or a parent or a friend for that matter. There's just your way. So what is your way? And how can we lean into that and then make both the journey and the result more pleasing to you?
Wow, interesting. So an interesting way that you found it. And were there people that you thought about as you were writing this book? You mentioned you get things done, but there's people surrounding you that maybe didn't. What were some of those people in your head as you were writing the book?
Yeah, so the first book, so I started teaching this workshop called Get It Done. And I thought, well, that's a silly name. I'll have to change that. And now here we are. All these years later,
Yes.
It's like my whole brand, Get Her Done. So I started teaching this Get It Done workshop, like in a church basement in Van Nuys to 11 people. It was very small. And then it became a book and got endorsed by Seth Godin, which was amazing. And then I wrote my second book, which was called Start Right Where You Are, How Little Changes Can Make a Big Difference for Overwhelmed Procrastinators, Frustrated Overachievers, and Recovering Perfectionists.
Wow.
Which partly answers your question, because those are the people I'm always talking to, is the frustrated overachievers and recovering perfectionists, the people who, like I said, have a lot of talents, a lot of dreams, a lot of ability, a lot of, and sometimes even a lot of energy, but get caught up mostly from the internal stuff, mostly from their sort of inner glass ceilings. This particular book, though, The 15-Minute Method, in part came out of my own experience. I have, for the last 2.5 years, had one of the invisible diseases. I've had long-haul COVID, which means that I am in bed almost all the time and have very little energy to do things. So all of a sudden, me, Little Miss Powerhouse, Little Miss Get Her Done,
right,
was working on very limited amounts of energy. And I really had to get strategic about what I was doing and when. And that's in some ways who this book is for, is people who are dealing with life, but then also sometimes life really hits you in the head. You know, you're dealing with grief, you're dealing with a breakup, you're dealing with a financial crisis, a health crisis. And all of a sudden, what at one point in your life felt like unlimited energy to do things is now, in fact, quite limited. And we really have to be careful.
Wow. Wow. Very interesting. And so you wrote this book in part from your discovery of having long haul COVID. And how is the book being received now?
Well, so far, so good. People really seem to enjoy it. And it's a little bit of a magic trick, this book, because I'll bottom line the 15-minute method for you. It's shocking in its simplicity.
That's good.
Yeah, the whole method, quote unquote method to the 15-minute method is this: spend 15 minutes a day, every single day, on something that matters to you. Spend 15 minutes a day, every single day, on something that matters to you. I don't care if it matters to anybody else. It might. But something that matters to you. And preferably do all this before you check your email. But that's up to you. Because what I find is, we hear this word overwhelm so much. There's so much to do. My plate is so full. I'm spinning so many plates. And we've all got, jobs and friends and obligations and work and school and kids and parents and all the things that are pressing in on us. We get everything done for everybody else all day. But the thing that would really make a difference to you somehow never even makes it onto the list.
Mm.
And I think that's where the feeling of overwhelm comes from. It's not so much that there's too much to do, it's that it all feels a little undifferentiated. It all feels like just a big hamster wheel of like, now I got to do this, 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 now I got to do this. And there's no time to be with yourself and open up those parts of yourself that maybe don't get touched the rest of the day. Maybe there's a part of you that loves to play guitar or loves to tie flies for fishing or loves to stretch or dance or garden or just sit still and do some prayer and meditation or whatever it is that lights you up. And what I notice in my clients and students who do it is, like I said, it's like a magic trick. Like there's this sort of disbelief ahead of time of like, really, Sam? Really? 15 minutes? That's really going to make a difference? Really? And then they do it. I have a daily practicum that it's a subscription. You can buy it. You can come and every day, every weekday, we meet for 15 minutes at 12 noon Eastern on Zoom. And, people, we all get on, I say hi, we start the timer. 15 minutes later, the timer goes off. And people look up at me with this like post-orgasmic glow every single day. It's amazing. They're like, oh my gosh, I just made that phone call I've been putting off for 6 weeks. Oh my gosh, I just made it through this much of this pile. I just sat out in the garden for 15 minutes and felt the sun on my face. I just wrote a letter. I just wrote some more of my screenplay. They're amazed at how much they can get done in 15 minutes. And then cumulatively, 15 minutes every day for a week, a month, a year, 6 years, 60 years, you can really create quite a body of work.
We'll get back to the interview right after this word from our sponsor. Are you tired of ACH transfers that only work during bank hours or checks getting delayed in the mail? It's time to ditch those slow, costly payment options. Say hello to Forwardly's award-winning cash flow management and step into the future of business payments to earn a free iPhone this summer. With Forwardly, you can send free instant payments while keeping funds in your bank longer. Plus, receive instant payments for 80% less than credit card fees. And enjoy same-day ACH absolutely free. Forwardly also syncs with QuickBooks Online and Xero for effortless reconciliation, and it offers automatic payments and approval workflows. Start receiving bank payments now to work towards a free iPhone 15 Pro. Sign up at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com/Forwardly to create your account. You can also find that link in the show notes. Thank you for hearing from our sponsor. Now let's get back to the interview. You know, it is one of those things that people underestimate, is the power of something so small in time, right? 1 minute, 2 minutes, 15 minutes. But if you're not doing it, that time isn't being accumulated towards yourself.
Right. Yes.
So little bits. And I think that's also part of, you know, you can look in other areas, exercise and anything you want to accomplish. People think of it as the big mountain versus chunking it down to the finite. And even that chunking down process can be very challenging. So when you put a time limit on it and say 15 minutes, I like the concept. People will be amazed at what they accomplish in those 15 minutes.
And then there's this sort of delightful spillover effect. You know, there must be a better word, but I usually refer to it as smugness. Just that little like sense of self-satisfaction of like, oh, I did that thing for me today. It's like when you go to the gym in the morning and you just spend all day being like, that's right, I'm awesome. I went to the gym. How are you? You know, like you just get this feeling of like, yes, I am moving forward in my life. And I can hear the voices that say like, oh, Sam, that's selfish. You know, if I took that kind of time for myself, for my jewelry design, for my whatever, that's selfish. And what I want to remind you is no, opposite. What is truly selfish is you walking around exhausted and stressed out and with no sense of humor. And the rest of us have to deal with you like that.
Mm-hmm.
That is selfish. When you take 15 minutes for yourself to keep your flame lit, to fuel your intellectual curiosity, your need to, you know, be physical, whatever it is, there's a light in your eyes. You know, you're calmer, you're less reactive. We love that version of you. We love that version of you. That is a truly generous act for you to show up with your full and complete self, and not just the self that feels like a functionary doing everything for everybody all the time.
So true. And really it is just thinking of my own day to day when I feel like I've accomplished something versus when I feel like I haven't accomplished something. Those 2 days are probably very similar days, except it's just my perception of the day versus, you know, it's like that clarity. So I can imagine when you've dictated that 15 minutes down, it's clear that you've spent the time, it started, it stopped. You've got some of those key components of I did that. Even the 15 minutes is an accomplishment of
That's
something,
exactly right.
achieving something, right? It's when it all gets blurred together and there's maybe the start and the stop hasn't been defined, even though every step of a journey is a completion. You know, every step is a completion. If we don't think of it that way, it's like, oh, it's not done. It's so much more. I didn't get anything done. I'm stuck in the mud here. Whereas really, you know, it's all just perception.
That's exactly right. And, you know, one of the things the late, great Tony Hsieh taught us is that one of the elements of happiness is progress or perceived progress.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even actually actual progress. It just needs to feel like progress. And that's absolutely true. So when we can go like, oh, look, I did this, you know, I cleared off this part of this shelf. I emptied this part of this closet. It does. You get that, you know, it's that list maker doing, you know, the checking off the list feeling is very good. It also gets us out of that delusion that there's going to be some perfect moment in the future.
Mm. Yeah,
you know, like, oh, yes, I'm going to have 3 months in Provence to work on my novel. Oh, I'm going to have 2 free weekends in a row to clear out the garage. Well, you know, I hope so, but it's not coming today. Like, that's not happening now. And also, we know that when we get the 2 free weekends, we don't really want to spend it cleaning the garage.
No,
so,
that's right.
Right? We want to go out. So what can we do today? You know, not waiting for some perfect time, not waiting to be some perfect version or some other version of ourselves that suddenly is more confident and has all the money in the bank and feels great and wakes up in the morning and goes, that's right, today's the day. That's not coming. So what little tiny steps can we take today? And again, hopscotch is right over your perfectionism because it's 15 minutes. How perfect is it going to be? And you're going to do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day.
Very cool. Yeah, I've never heard of something like that. Very simple, very structured, and really contributes to that, compounding effect of anything.
That's right.
That's the thing that people get stuck. We kind of mentioned it. Think of the mountain. It's hard to get up the mountain, but inch by inch, if you did a little bit every day, you get there. It's 15 minutes a day over the year. You've spent a lot of time on this, and that time, that's the thing, is like people would perceive that the time is well, you're doing something instead of something else. But really, I would imagine that your clients are actually, that 15 minutes is actually magical time, because there's time, if that 15 minutes in that day is probably spent worrying, procrastinating, overthinking, whatever. There's so much time in a day. And
Right.
is it all productive? When you compound it and compress it like that, it's like magic. You get this extra 15 minutes that you didn't have before, but you really did, but you weren't using it effectively, perhaps. So it's an interesting concept.
And it really, I think it sends an important signal to your inner self, to your belly, to your gut, the part of you that really makes the decisions. Like,
That's
we
right.
love to think that it's our logic that makes our decisions, but it's not really. It's our inner self. And when you set aside that time and take it seriously every day, I think there's a part of you that goes like, "Oh, wait, she's not kidding. Oh, he's serious. We're doing this. Oh, okay." Like, and
That's right.
now you're sort of galvanized towards movement, and also then you're in it, right? And the way you feel when you are in a project, and we know this, if you've ever had something big to you're planning a big vacation or you're planning a wedding, well, it takes a couple of months to get set up for it, but there's part of you that's sort of always spinning on it, right? That's always, oh, like, that's right. Next week I have to do the invitations. Oh, right. Next week I have to review and it's delightful, that sense of progress on something, again, something that matters to you, something that matters to your health, to your spirit, to your body, to your mind. It may or may not matter to your family. It may or may not matter to your community. I want it to matter to you.
Mm, yeah, that's important. That's an important piece. I think the other thing, and I think this is maybe attached to the question of, some of the other challenges. You mentioned it early on. People in overwhelm, they procrastinate, they're high achievers, perfectionists, these sorts of things. I'd like to dig into that a little bit. I know some of our audience listening would be like that, but I would also say your 15 minutes. It was something I was listening to recently with my son, actually, and it was, if you're creating new beliefs, the belief, it's to create a belief. It's you're not that today. If you're like in this
Right.
regard, it's like hockey, right? He plays hockey, and so creating a belief around himself as an athlete, as a hockey player, it's like, well, he's not a professional hockey player. So there's some way to create those beliefs, and one of them is like you create micro beliefs about how you are in the game, even though it might not be true in that moment. It's like, I'm the hardest worker on the team, you
Right.
know, versus the statement of I'm going to work really hard on the team. It's still not, that's like a future thing. It's not real. It's saying something you might be in the future. Whereas this statement saying, I am that today, whether it's true or not, there are truths to it. But in your 15 minutes, what someone can say is, I get things done,
That's right.
because every day they get things done. And that's kind of similar to what you were saying around your unconscious mind starts to relate to, I get things done. So that probably has a compounding effect across someone's life. Like it creates a new belief.
That's fantastic, Michael.
Yeah,
That's very insightful. And your son is lucky. That's because you're exactly right. There's a striking difference between I will do this or I want to do this versus I am this. I take this on as part of my identity. And we see it when people make huge changes in their lives, when they quit smoking, when they quit drinking, when they, quit other self-destructive behaviors. It's not like, oh, I'm a person who wants to smoke and doesn't, because that doesn't last very long.
Right.
But I am a non-smoker.
That's right.
Right. That, and I see it in people who want to, lose weight or get their fitness together. Well, we can't lose 25 pounds today. That's not possible. But we can make choices. I make the choices that a healthy eater makes. I make the choices that a person in love with their body makes. I am a healthy eater. I am a respectful body owner, body operator.
That's right. And it really will show up in multiple areas that someone, and that's that magic piece you mentioned earlier on. I really think that is the magic piece. It's like you're shifting something that someone cannot, you can't just go and buy it. You have to go through the process of altering the way you relate to yourself and to what you're doing. And it came up as well in a podcast I was listening to. I'm a big fan of the Saturday Night Live back in the 80s, 90s. And so there's a podcast called Fly on the Wall with
Sure.
Dana Carvey and drawing a blank now, of course, of the other guy who's great, David Spade. And they had Jerry Seinfeld on as a conversation. So they talked to people, cast members, people who've been on the show, writers, all that stuff. And it's like the idea that you'd be a fly on the wall to the conversations that happen. But the interesting piece of great podcast if you like comedy. The interesting piece, though, is Jerry Seinfeld was talking about his own mindset coach and how the greatest battle, and I don't know, I'm paraphrasing and it's not exactly how he said it, but what he struggles with the most is that inner critic.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it early on, the inner critic saying, oh, you're not someone who gets something done. You're not going to do this. It's not going to happen. Right. And what he's always working on is trying to get to the place where that inner critic, it's not that it's gone, but it's not being heard. It's quiet. And he calls that state, when he gets there, flow.
Yeah.
And so the 15-minute, it's kind of similar in that you're every day you're working on getting to flow, which is you're setting that timer and you're saying, boom. It's not like you're going to sit there and let the inner critic go for very long. You only have 15 minutes. You just start doing it. It's like it's almost like you're jumping over. And the more you do that, the better you'll likely get at getting into flow state.
Yeah. So a couple things about that. One is, I don't know if I mentioned, when I lived in Chicago, I worked at the Second City Theater for a really long time. I worked in both the administration and then ultimately as an actor. So so I'm friends with all those guys.
I bet.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So,
we better not talk too much about it. I might just go off track here. We'll just have you and I a conversation. Our listener.
Well, there is. I will say there is a picture of me from my first wedding, and you can tell it's me because I'm the one in the big white dress, and all our friends from work, and it's Steve Carell and Stephen Colbert and Jim Belushi and Amy Sedaris and Nia Vardalos and Ian Gomez and Charlie Hartsock, like all the people. And we were just kids, we were going down in the van and to go to a show for $75 down in Bloomington Normal. Adam McKay and Rachel Dratch and Horatio Sands, all those guys. And I will tell you, just with very few exceptions, all those people are as wonderful and delightful and smart and fun as you would hope that they are.
Oh, lovely.
They're truly, truly wonderful people.
Lovely.
I was really lucky. So that's just check on the comedy box. Jerry Seinfeld is quite famous also for his chain of X's. When he started in his comedy career very young, he started making sure he had to write a joke a day or a certain number of jokes a day. And every time he did it, he put an X on his calendar.
Nice.
And after a while, he never wanted to break the chain. Right. You've got these pages and pages of X'd out days. You don't, that looks great. You don't want there suddenly to be a gap there. So he's now been writing jokes every day for 60 years.
It's remarkable.
So Yeah. So it's another way of, again, that compound effect. And again, you just become like, no, I am the person who,
That's right. I
does this
write
every
jokes
day.
every day. I'm a writer. I
I am a
produce.
writer. I
Yeah,
write
I'm a
jokes every
writer.
day.
Yeah.
The other key thing here, too, is because we are focused on something that matters to you, we can be fairly certain that whatever the results are, I can't promise you an outcome, but I can promise you that the journey will be satisfying to you
Hmm.
because you are engaging in something that genuinely matters to you. And if you're not sure, if you're one of those people who's like, I don't know what I like, I don't know what I want to do, I don't know what I would spend my 15 minutes on, great. Make a list of a bunch of different 15-minute things and try them.
That's right.
Today I'm going to try crocheting. Tomorrow I'm going to try taking a walk. The next day I'm going to try opera singing. I don't know. Play around. Have some fun, for crying out loud. It's not school. I'm not
It,
your mom. you
that
know?
and that's the piece that I think that's the shocking piece, is that people will be shocked at how much. Yeah, it's not something you just, oh, I'm great at the 15 minutes, I imagine. Um, but it's, I just, I keep thinking back to times in my life where there's like the breakthrough, where
Yeah.
you go, oh, this is like so daunting, procrastinating on it. And it's like, oh, how am I going to tackle that? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got to get this done. The good old time,
Right?
the old cutoff date, right? It's like, I've been there, I've done it. And all of a sudden sit down and start. And it's like, I got this. I've figured it out. But it was so painful to lead up to it. And sometimes I think there's a gift in the procrastination because I don't fully have it thought out. I do need to think about it. And I think that's more shifting how I relate to what is procrastination. It's like, am I procrastinating, or am I still trying to noodle through this thing and figure it out?
Right.
Because it's like, there's so many examples in my own life, and I'm sure you have them as well, where you're like, gee, I'm glad I didn't take action on that.
A
This is a much
hundred
better idea,
percent.
right?
100%. Yeah, procrastination is a very big word that covers a lot of ground. And I think it's
It
really
does.
helpful for us to be a little more precise with ourselves about what we're talking about. And you're absolutely right. Deadlines have beauty and magic in them. And I think nobody knows that better than bookkeepers. Like nobody does,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So
everybody
it
does
keeps the
anything,
world going
everything,
around, those good old deadlines. I mean, the
right? Is the
tax world.
deadlines.
Yeah.
And I'm always talking to people who are like, oh my gosh, I've got this big presentation due on Monday and I haven't even started. Well, that's not true. You've been, as you say, noodling on it for a while. And by the time you actually sit down to type up your notes, you probably have a pretty good idea of what it is you're going to do. So, is it really procrastination, or is it just there's an invisible part of the process that you've been engaged in? And then, really, what's driving the procrastination? Because sometimes there is a real element of divine timing. There really is oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't move forward on that back when I thought I should, because now I have this new information, or oh look, the fare's dropped, or oh look, this person is suddenly available. Like you can leave a little space for magic. It's not all you.
That's right. That's right. And I think, it it's one of those things where I can see, just I'm sort of applying my own thoughts to your 15-minute method, is if I had 15 minutes every day that I was devoting, and I had projects like that, you can work on them a little bit. That's what I found to be quite helpful. I'd say last 18 months, maybe 2 years. I flipped to something called Apple Notes. And the reason why Apple Notes, it's nothing special. It's a notepad. What's great about it is you don't have to save it. It automatically saves. It's on every single device that I have.
Yep.
And I can access it anywhere I go. And so if I have an idea or a thought, I can just pop it up my phone, put it in, and it's there immediately on all the devices. That's been very helpful for me, because if there's things I'm working on, specific projects, I mean, we use them in our business as well, workflow management, task management, all this stuff. This is more like a bunch of information, bunch of thoughts that I can access and grab. And that's really helped as well. And I guess in a way, it's kind of like the 15-minute, because I'm saying at this moment, I'm going to work for 15 minutes, and it's not 15 minutes, but I'm going to work for a little bit of time, just get some
Yeah.
thoughts down. Oh, I have an idea. I'm going to put it onto that little piece. For me, that's been very helpful. Not everybody's going to like that, the way they work in their life. And you mentioned that it's not what you do in the 15 minutes, and how you tackle this is going to be different for every single person. And that's why, there's so many different books on productivity and time management of time is that it doesn't resonate with everyone. So you have to. It's a bit of a discovery and journey in and of itself to figure it out. For I know it has been for myself, anyways.
Absolutely. And you must have some kind of idea capture system, especially those of you who are, like I say, overthinkers, highly creative people who have a lot of ideas all the time. I like index cards. I also love Apple Notes because then also when I'm driving, I can say, Siri, take a note, and it will open up notes and I
Oh,
can
I haven't
dictate a
tried that.
note. Oh, yeah,
I'll
it's
try
great.
that.
You do have to
That's
sort of
cool.
keep talking. Siri doesn't really understand pauses, so you have to say,
Yeah.
Siri, take a note, and then you
That would
say,
be helpful.
please remember
Yeah.
to send a thank you note to Michael Palmer about the thing about the
Yes.
But it's very, and you're right, it's very handy that it is that it's on all my devices. I like that too. Because again, once you're in it, once you're actually doing that work every day, you will have more thoughts about it. It will stay with you. And you'll have them at the most inconvenient times. So don't think you're going to remember it because you won't. So whatever it is, if you like voice memo, great. If you like to call and leave yourself a message, index cards. I don't love journals. I love journals for journaling, but journaling again is about process. It's not, and I can't count how many great ideas I've had that I put down in a journal and then I never find them again because they're just in the journal. So sometimes I'll write them in my date book. That will help me remember when it all happened. I'm a big fan of just paper in general. I love Levenger legal pads. I love pens. I'm kind of an analog girl. But whatever works for you, and acknowledge too that like all systems, it may work for a long time and then stop working. You may
That's
have a
right.
shift in your life or in your habits or in something that all of a sudden it's like, oh, I used to do that. That used to work really well, but now it doesn't. Great. Find something new. Find a new way to do it.
Yeah, it's a constant evolution for sure. And I've used so many different tools, devices, ways of doing things, and yeah, finding Apple Notes has been for me just a very helpful tool for me to capture those things and keep it organized and not necessarily organized, but be able to access. That's like the journal. You write in a journal, it's gone. It's an export, but the retrieval very difficult to retrieve
Very
from.
difficult.
Whereas Apple Notes retrieval's great. It's got short-term and long-term memory, right? Even if I don't. So. Well, this is great. This has been a really interesting conversation. I love that you've got this. Tell us a little bit more about this program, the 15-minute program. I can imagine some of our listeners would be really interested in joining that program.
It's a ton of fun. It's the daily practicum is what we call it, the daily practicum. And it happens right now every day at 12 noon Eastern, every workday. We don't do weekends, but every workday at 12 noon Eastern. So 9 a.m. Pacific. And yeah, it's a subscription. I don't know. It's less than $100. I can't remember, but it's great. And there, some people show up every single day. Some people show up a couple times a week. Some people never show up at all, but just having it on their calendar reminds them that they want to do it at a different time. And that accountability is really helpful to them. The thing that I really
can
love
people
about
trial it? Can they trial it before they buy it? How does that work?
There might actually that may be this is me being a terrible business owner. I think there might be a trial on it, but always, my thing is always satisfaction guaranteed or your tuition cheerfully refunded. If you start it and you don't like it, just let me know.
You're that type of person, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll give you your money back. I don't care.
Yeah.
But it's delightful, and especially for people who have ADD, ADHD, or other varieties of neurospiciness. This practice that in some worlds is called body doubling or parallel play. There's something about being in a quote unquote room, a virtual room of people who are also have their heads down and are working that really helps a person focus and move forward. Having it on the calendar, knowing it's a fixed amount of time, doing it in a group, having that feeling that like mommy is watching, mommy's going to be there. All of these things really conspire to work with your natural brain, the natural way you like to do things, to be a really fun, productive time.
Interesting. And now, do people talk, or is it just literally hello and get to work?
It's literally hello. I have a little breathing technique that I do. So we all take a breath together
Yep.
and then, that's it. Most people turn off their cameras. I leave mine on if I'm there. Sometimes there are other people facilitating it. I'm not always there, and the timer goes for 15 minutes and then it goes off. And sometimes people have a question or they often report in like, I did it. I did the thing. And
Nice.
sometimes we'll chit chat a little bit, but it's not a lot. It's
That's
really
great.
just
Yeah,
about the
because
doing.
it's time to do, right?
It's time to do.
I love the idea. I think it's a great idea, and it's one of those things where we live in such a virtual, digital world. To be able to connect with people at the same time, even though it is virtual or digital, it's still a collective, right? A collective. Everybody has the same purpose and for being on the call to get to use this 15 minutes, create a structure, and get things done. And I think by doing it as a subscription and a multi-user, one-to-many type of scenario, it keeps the cost down for people to, if you hired a coach to spend 15 minutes with you, it'd be considerably more money, right?
That's right.
So
And
I
it
like
also
it.
gives you something else to say to the other people in your life, to be able to say like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on a Zoom then. I have a meeting.
That's right. It creates a real firm block. And I'm a big believer of time blocking as well. That's another thing that worked out for me. If it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. And, it just keeps me from frying out in my brain, really.
Yeah.
So it's a block. You've got the block in there, and that's another entry point into time blocking. If you're not doing it, another benefit, I think.
Totally. And sometimes it opens up the gates to true flow, like, Jerry Seinfeld, and I think he probably got it from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the creativity scholar, who sort of identified the phrase flow. He's the one who really started it, using it. It's one of our favorite things in life is to be in that flow state. We love that when we're not thinking about anything else. I always think about it as skiing, when you're just skiing down the mountain and it's just you
That's
in the
right.
mountain and
Yes.
there's no room in your mind for anything else and you feel so alive. It's so glorious. As a performer, we're always looking for flow, right? And so sometimes people sit down for 15 minutes and get up 4 hours later, which is fantastic. And other times it's 15 minutes of staring at a blank piece of paper, which is also fantastic.
That's right.
Like, there is nothing wrong with 15 minutes of enforced boredom. And those of us who remember taking long car trips in the way back of the Volvo, staring out the window, like, there's something beautiful about giving your mind some time to just stare.
That's right. Stare at the wall. Yeah.
Stare at the wall.
Not enough staring at the wall days these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, this is great. Now, if people were interested in the program, what would be the best way for them to get there? Of course, we'll put the link in the show notes, but it's always good if people are driving, they hear the name of the place to go get that.
Yeah, definitely. So the best thing to do is come to my website, which is therealsambennett.com.
Okay.
Therealsambennett.com, 2 N's and 2 T's. My father would say the second T is silent.
Perfect.
Thanks, Dad. Dad jokes, right?
Yes.
And then I'm also The Real Sam Bennett on all the socials. So if you'd rather come to me that way. But yes, please. And the great thing about coming to my site is then you get on my email list, which is really how I communicate most of everything. I try to remember to put things on socials, but I don't always. So if you're on the email list, then you'll get all the good stuff, all the free stuff. And then you can also write me back and tell me about your 15-minute project and how it's going and if you need support or if I can help. I'm so curious. We'll become pen pals and best friends. It'll be great.
I love it. I love it. Well, it's just absolutely a really interesting concept that you've come up with. It sounds like you've seen some really great resources, the books you've written, the people you've worked with. I know our audience is sitting there right now thinking, oh, this has been lovely to get to know you and pleased to know that there's some great resources available for them if they want to get more things done and have fun doing it and in a simple way. So thank you
so
for
much.
being on the show.
Oh, it's my delight. I love talking about this stuff, and I love helping people, as you say, make their lives a little, richer. Let's get out of the story that we're so busy and exhausted all the time. Let's talk about the hand lettering practice I did this morning, or the tomato plant I pruned. Let's be more interesting than busy.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Till next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.